Good afternoon. Welcome. Thank you for joining our webinar today called Mindfulness of Feeling Tones and Emotions, Using Mindfulness to Navigate Turbulent Times. My name is Summer Meyer. I'll be your moderator today. And just a reminder to ask questions in the questions box. Feel free to share your experience using the webinar tools for engaging with us. We will have a limited time for Q&A towards the end of the session today, but you can always feel free to email marketing@peacehealth.org and we'll be sure to address any questions that you might have. And also just a quick disclaimer, the views and thoughts expressed in the webinar belong solely to our presenter today and not necessarily to PeaceHealth. The presenter is not a medical professional, but he does have extensive experience utilizing mindfulness practices to recover from multiple and severe traumatic experiences he suffered as a child. So with that, I would like to introduce you to our speaker today. Please welcome Al Parikh. Al has been a mindfulness coach since 2013, especially focusing on coaching in the workplace. He also works with us here as a project manager at PeaceHealth. He began his mindfulness practices in 1991 at a retreat outside of Mumbai. So thank you, Al, for joining us today. And I'll go ahead and turn it over the webinar to you to give us an overview.
Okay, well, thank you for that introduction, Summer. I would like to welcome all the participants to this webinar. We are going through some very tough and trying times. I think that we all need as much help as we can get to navigate through this difficult situation. That is the main reason why we have put together this series of webinars. So this is the fourth in the series, and we'll have 4 more after this one. So mindfulness is a very broad and deep practice. There are many elements within this practice that you can use to tailor it in your own unique ways to meet your specific needs. So the purpose of this series of webinars is for you to gain some knowledge and get access to some tools that will help you manage your situation a little better. And piggybacking on what Summer just mentioned earlier, all these webinars are recorded and they are posted on PeaceHealth's YouTube channel. They are also linked back to the Healthy You page, so you can access them anytime in case you are not able to attend the live one. So again, thank you all for attending. So for this specific webinar, I just want to give you a brief overview. I am going to talk about mindfulness. What exactly is mindfulness? I'll give a brief definition. Then I'll talk about the principles behind mindfulness of feeling tones and emotions practice. I will talk about the dynamics of this practice because this is somewhat different from other practices that we have done, like mindfulness of breath, mindfulness of body, thoughts, etc. I'll provide some tips and then we will do a 15-minute guided meditation. Then I'll talk about benefits and then we'll open up the floor for Q&A. So what is mindfulness? Now, the terms mindfulness practice and mindfulness meditation are used synonymously. They mean one and the same thing to me. So I might use either one of the two terms. So mindfulness means paying attention in a particular way, on purpose, in the present moment, and non-judgmentally. So there are many different attributes in this definition. The first attribute is the emphasis on being purposeful. This is crucial because it is a counterbalance to the automatic pilot default that inhabits our minds all the time, because of which our attention strays from object to object in no specific order or no specific discipline. So there is an element of intention here. The second attribute is non judgmentally. In the process of paying attention in a particular way, we don't judge any experience that arises within us as good or bad, pleasant or unpleasant. We simply accept whatever arises and we notice it arising and passing through us. So, within mindfulness, we are directing our attention to a specific object in the present moment very intentionally and without making judgments on whatever it is that arises inside of us. So, there is a very beautiful metaphor that is very relevant to this specific practice of mindfulness of emotions. So, this is the metaphor of peeling onions. So, let's say that we have an onion and we need to get to its seed. The only way to get to the seed is by peeling off layers and layers of skin. All right. When we peel off one layer, we find another layer and then another and then another till we reach the seed. In the same way, if we want to understand the true nature of our minds, we have to peel off layers and layers of conditioning. And by conditioning, I mean our thoughts and attitudes and beliefs, everything else that is part of our being as a result of all our past experiences. Now, when we are born with a very clear heart, clear mind, warmth, and wisdom in our own way. We are very much loving and compassionate. But as we grow older, as we go through life's experiences, we put on these layers and layers of conditioning. All right. And what happens is some layers of our conditioning are very sticky. And by that, I mean the layers that pertain to pain and suffering and anger and mood disorders, etc. Right? When we are aware of the sticky nature of our minds, right, our awareness is free from it, basically. Uh, so that gives us the space to peel back those layers one by one. And peeling off those layers translate to healing. They translate to well being and the process of us becoming healthier. So, again, this metaphor of peeling onions is very, very relevant to the practice that we will talk about today. Types of mindfulness practices. There are many amazing objects to use for mindfulness practice. If you have attended my previous webinar, you know about the breath, you know about the body, thoughts. Today, we'll talk about the emotions. And the next webinar, we will focus on mind states. So let's focus on the principles of mindfulness of feeling tones and emotions practice. There are three basic components to an emotion. In other words, when an emotion arises within us, right, it comes with three distinct components. The first component is the thoughts or the story around that emotion, right? So, for example, if you experience an emotion of anger, right, there is a story or there are some thoughts associated with that anger. For example, how dare he do this to me, or how dare she say this to me, whatever it is, right? The thoughts. The second component is the physical sensations, how the emotion manifests itself in the body. So when anger arises, there are distinct sensations in our body. So, for example, our breath becomes more labored, our blood pressure increases, we feel an increased level of heat in the body, right? Our forehead tenses, our muscles tighten, right? So, those are the physical sensations uh, that that get triggered when the emotion manifests itself in the body. And the third and the most important component for this practice is emotional mood or feeling tones. So, feeling tones are like a signature of an emotion. Feeling tones can be either pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. And it's very important to focus on feeling tones as opposed to focusing on emotions, is because we go through a myriad of emotions throughout the day, throughout any given hour, right? It is not possible for us to focus on emotions because they change on a moment to moment basis. But the underlying signature stays the same. It lasts somewhat longer than the emotion. Now, because the feeling tones can be either pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral, it becomes a great object for our mindfulness practice. Now, we bring our mindset, right, the mindset that we possess when we engage with the world outside. That mindset has been derived from our ancestors in the distant past. All right. Not much has changed in the brain structure that we possess as compared to the brain structures of our ancestors, from hundreds or even thousands of years ago. We bring that ancient mindset to bear on the problems of our contemporary interconnected complex technology filled world. And this is where we run into problems. So, because of this mindset, right, what our ancestors had to do is if they liked something, right, they had to have it. If they disliked something, they had to run away from it, right? So they were wired to survive, all right? And we have the same wirings inside of us. So what happens is if we like something, we want it, we crave for it. And if we dislike something, we want to run away from it, all right? Or we want to suppress it with something that is pleasant. So feeling tones actually keep us hooked into our conditional behavior of craving and aversion, right? like I mentioned, when we crave something, when we like something, we want it more and more. And if we don't like something, we want to push it away. Because of the importance of feeling tones, right? They become a linchpin for our transformation and for our healing. Uh, because when you consider an unpleasant feeling tone, that can arise from an emotion of, let's say, loneliness or resentment or anger or depression, right? Our primal instinct is to layer it with something pleasant. And that pleasant feeling tone can come about by way of, alcohol or cigarette or chocolate. You see? So at this granular level, our primal tendency to layer an unpleasant feeling tone with something that is pleasant becomes the genesis for all addictive behaviors. Now, in this practice, we will, just like I talked about the metaphor of peeling onions, right? We will use feeling tones to peel back the layers and layers of conditioning that envelope us. And we'll do it one by one. Um, to continue this discussion further, there is another metaphor that I would like to talk about. It's called the metaphor of a falling knife. Now, let's say that there is a knife that is falling, falling from the sky. It's falling to the ground, and you place your hand in its path. When the knife is in the air, you don't feel any pain. Okay, but when the knife pierces the solid surface of your hand, that's when you experience pain. Okay, now let's take this metaphor a step further. Okay, let's talk about mental knives. When we are when we are preoccupied with thoughts that um, that hurt us. So, for example, if we are recalling some experiences of trauma in the past, when they hit us, it's like falling knives that come and pierce us. And we get hurt every time we experience those thoughts or those emotions, right? So the question arises, in order for those mental knives to cause us pain and suffering, where is the solidity coming from? When it came to physical hand, right, when we placed our physical hand, right, the solidity was the solid surface of our hand, right? But now we are talking about these mental knives. Where is the solidity coming from? And the answer is, the solidity is coming from our um, our holding on to something. We, as long as we grasp to something, right, that creates the solidity, and that creates pain and suffering. And conversely, if you let go, then to the extent that you are able to let go, to that extent you will suffer less. It's like your hand, placing your hand in the path of the falling knife, right? If you somehow make your hand more porous, then the knife will go through and through, and it'll cause minimal pain. Now, this is a very broad and deep topic, this topic of feeling tones and emotions, and I'm trying to squeeze a lot of information in a very short period of time. So please bear with me. But these are the principles, okay? mindfulness, or I'm sorry, the feeling tones are a component, an important component to every emotion that arises between us, because feeling tones can be either pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. It's easier for us to focus on the feeling tones instead of on the emotions. And then the dynamic behind the feeling tones is carved within us, in the sense that it's part of who we are as human species, right? Feeling tones keep us hooked into our conditioning behavior of craving and aversion, right? And if we are able to go to that level of feeling tone, right? And underneath the feeling tone, if we are able to figure out what is it that we are holding on to, right? And then if we are able to let go, we can heal ourselves from a uh, uh, range of stuff that affects us. So I hope it all makes sense. So let me talk quickly about the dynamics of the feeling tones practice. We focus on the feeling tone of moment to moment experience. Feeling tones are just beneath our surface, so to speak, and they can arise at any moment in an instant. Okay, so even when we are practicing mindfulness meditation, right, something will trigger, something from the outside or something from inside of us will trigger an emotion that will have a feeling tone. It may be strong, it may not be strong, but that feeling tone will arise and you'll be able to experience it. Okay, so when you are doing mindfulness of feeling tones practice, you focus on the feeling tone of moment to moment experience. Whenever a strong, pleasant, or unpleasant feeling tone arises, note the automatic reaction to it by craving or aversion, right? You might be meditating, you might be sitting with your eyes closed, and a thought will pop up in your mind about an ice cream. Let's say you love ice cream. The moment you think about an ice cream, right, there'll be an emotion that, oh my God, yes, I love the ice cream. You crave for it. So when you notice the feeling tone, underneath the feeling tone, there is this craving. So make a note of it. And then whatever it is that you might be holding on to underneath the craving or aversion, that you also need to note, because underneath craving or aversion, there is something that we hold on to. Again, coming back to my metaphor of peeling onions, right? So we are now looking under the hood, so to speak. We we start with feeling tone of moment to moment experience. Whenever a strong feeling tone arises, we note the underlying reaction to it by craving or aversion, and then beneath the craving or aversion, there is this holding on to. When you find out what it is that you're holding on to, you let go. And when you let go, this whole structure of pain and suffering that arises will collapse, leading to some degree of freedom, some degree of relief, and some degree of healing. So, so let me go back. I want to give you a quick example of this particular practice. Okay, and it's kind of funny. This is like 10 years ago. I was teaching this very practice in a group setting. All right. There were about 12 or 13 of us. We were all seated around in a circle in a conference room at my place of work. And we were doing this practice using a recording. And we were all deep into the practice. All right. There was perfect silence, and it was we were all into it. All of a sudden, outside the conference room, there was another office. That office door opened, and some people came out of the office talking loudly and laughing loudly. Now, in an instant, my I was very much into this meditation. As soon as I hear that loud distraction, I felt like getting up and I felt like screaming at them. I felt like shouting at them and I felt like telling them, shut the bleep up. We are meditating here. You know, I I didn't do it, but a in just a brief moment, my feeling tone experience changed from something that was pleasant to something that became extremely unpleasant. And then I quickly realized that I got angry because I was holding on to this idea that I want that session to be a productive session. I wanted people to come and thank me after the session that, oh my God, that was great, you are awesome, etc., 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 right? So even when I was teaching this, there was some tightness in me. There was some stress in me because I wanted to achieve a particular outcome. And when that stray noise entered into our experience, it made me angry. So this is a very universal experience that we all have. If we are able to do this practice, we will quickly realize how easy it is for these pleasant or unpleasant feeling tones to arise inside of us, and how easily they can destabilize us, and how easily we can lose the control of our mind, or the composure
Mhm.
of our mind. So here are some tips. When you are doing this practice, be gentle and kind with yourself. Mindfulness is synonymous with kindfulness, right? Adopt a non-striving attitude, right? You are not trying to understand all your feeling tones and all your emotions in one shot, right? You are very calmly and very gently exploring what is happening inside of you. You are trying to unpeel these layers of conditioning that uh, that that surrounds you. Now, during this practice, if you are unable to discern any strong, pleasant, or unpleasant feeling tones, keep your attention on the breath. So start with the breath, and when something arises, look at it, look at the feeling tone, and look at how you react to that feeling tone, and then look at what it is that you're holding on to. Okay, because we are holding on to something. We are holding on to many things all the time. So it's just a matter of figuring out what it is that you're holding on to, and then letting go. So here are the brief tips. So let's do this guided practice. It'll run for about 15 minutes and I'll guide you. Um, Perhaps Summer can kick us off with a bell chime. Can you do that?
Yes, I can. Here we go.
Yes. Welcome to the mindfulness of feeling tone meditation. Take a moment to let the body settle in a comfortable position. Relax the whole body. Keep your head, neck, and back erect but not rigid. Keep the hands comfortably placed on the lap or on the knees if sitting. Keep the hands on the sides if lying down. Intentionally cultivate an attitude of patience, gentleness, and kindness towards yourself. Allow your eyes to gently close and tune in to the feeling of the breath flowing in and out of the body. Focus your attention on the sensation of the breath moving past the nostrils or on the sensation of the breath moving into the belly, lifting it during each in breath and receding gently on each out breath. Follow the breath as it comes in and goes out. Now, bring your awareness to the feeling tone. Ignore body sensations, ignore sights and sounds. Only use your breath as an anchor for your mindfulness practice. Have a simple, direct, and clear recognition of the feeling aspect of experience. Focus on the feeling tone of moment to moment experience: pleasant, pleasant, unpleasant, unpleasant, neutral, etc., and observe with detachment. Try not to get involved in the story of your thoughts, fantasies, or emotions. Just note the underlying feeling tone of the experience. Notice the automatic reaction to it by craving or aversion. Note whatever it is that you're holding on to and then let go. If no feeling tones are arising, gently bring your attention back to the breath. Do this for a block of silence of about 3 minutes. Focus your attention on the feeling tone of moment to moment experience. Pleasant, pleasant, unpleasant, neutral, etc. And observe with detachment. If no feeling tones are rising, bring your attention back to the breath. Try not to get involved in the story of your thoughts, fantasies, or emotions. Just note the underlying feeling tone of the experience. Notice the automatic reaction to it by craving or aversion. Note whatever it is that you're holding on to and let go. Focus on the feeling tone of moment to moment experience. Pleasant, pleasant, unpleasant, neutral, etc. And observe with detachment. Try not to get involved in the story of your thoughts, fantasies, or emotions. Just note the underlying feeling tone of the experience. Notice the automatic reaction to it by craving or aversion. Note whatever it is that you're holding on to and let go. If no feeling tones are rising, then bring your attention back to your breath. We now come to an end of this meditation. Please stay centered for a few moments to dedicate the merits of this practice. May I be happy. May I be peaceful. May I live with ease. May all beings be happy. May all beings be peaceful. May all beings live with ease. Well, thank you for bringing us back, Summer.
You're welcome. Thank you, Al.
Yes. All right. Let's talk about the benefits of this specific practice. So, feeling tones practice allows us to deal with quote unquote bad experiences in a skillful manner. Bad experiences are nothing but emotions with unpleasant feeling tones, right? When you are dealing at the feeling tones level, it becomes slightly impersonal, all right? And you find the levers to turn your bad experience into either a positive experience or into a neutral experience. Um, we realize that bad experiences should not equate to suffering. So, in our default state of mind, when we experience unpleasant feeling tones, we tend to push it away or layer it with something that is pleasant, but we are not dealing with the root cause of this experience, root cause of our suffering. With this practice, you are able to go at that deep level of your mind and you're able to become free of these bad experiences. So, feeling tones practice allows us to deal with such experiences in a skillful manner. And the next and a far more important benefit is the fact that feeling tones practice provides a pathway for treating addiction behaviors in a gentle way, not as a quick fix, but with repeated practice. If you remember in one of my earlier slides, I mentioned the fact that the way we are wired is when we have a distinctly unpleasant experience or an experience with unpleasant feeling tones, we react to it by layering it with something pleasant. And that becomes the genesis of all addiction behaviors, right? Now, at this level of your mind, with this practice, you are able to break that automatic link. Now, addiction is a very complicated condition, but cravings and triggers have a lot to do with why people keep up with those behaviors. So, a craving is like a stimulus, a trigger, I'm sorry, is a stimulus that sparks a craving. Um, and to better respond to triggers and cravings, we need to identify them and understand them. So, mindfulness practice provides an overall methodology and philosophy for understanding them. And then, when you realize that at the end of the day, the root cause is that we are holding on to something. And what that something is unique from individual to individual. Now, at the end of the day, we perpetuate our sufferings that cause addiction. So, if you are able to let go, you can become free of that experience. So, just some quick disclaimer: do not use this as a substitute for regular pharmacologic treatment. It is best to supplement this practice with other treatments and let your doctor know of this approach. There are there is a lot of research that's being done on this specific modality of using mindfulness to treat addiction behaviors. It was only last weekend that I was looking into the website of National Institutes of Health, and I was blown away by the sheer number of research papers from different sources that are trying to figure this out. You see, and they have made a lot of progress. So it's all very, very promising. Okay, now any do you have any questions? Summer, have people posted any questions?
Hi, yes, actually, there are a couple of questions. I would just encourage all the participants to feel free to share your experience or ask questions. We'll spend just a few minutes here. I'll moderate a couple questions that have come in already and give Al the chance to address these. If we're unable to answer any questions, just a reminder, you can feel free to email us at marketing@peacehealth.org. So the first question is there a reason we tend to replay bad experiences?
Is there a reason why we replay bad experiences? Um, yeah, a number of reasons. Okay, we replay those experiences because they are incomplete. In other words, if something happened to us in the past, okay, um, and while processing that experience, we get filled with emotions like, anger, resentment, shame, etc., right? We feel that we should have acted differently, we should have said something differently, etc. Because this is an incomplete experience, we, in our minds, we keep replaying it again and again and again. So with this practice, when you note the unpleasant feeling tone of that experience, right? It's distinctly unpleasant, right? It doesn't matter what emotions are attached to it, it's distinctly unpleasant. Figure out what is it that you're holding on to. If you think that, gosh, I wish that I had acted differently, you know, um, that is a way of us holding on to something, right? If you are able to let go, if you are able to reflect on the fact that you did something with with the little information you had at that time, right? And it's always easy to look at things with a 2020 vision, so to speak, right? So with some understanding, right, if you're able to let go, then the entire experience, the entire series of repetitive experience can collapse, and they can no longer affect you the way it did before.
Thank you.
Did
Thank
that
you,
make
Al.
sense? Yeah.
Yes. There is, I'll just ask this one more question from, this one's from Paula. I noticed I kept getting caught up in the story of my emotions. Any advice to avoid this?
Um, okay, so you are not trying to avoid the experience. Again, avoidance is a way of our automatic reaction to the feeling tone, right? This repeated story that runs in our mind creates a distinctly unpleasant feeling tone. The more you try to push them, the more they will persist. So try to understand, try to figure out what it is that is underneath those stories, or that experience. In almost all instances, there is something that we are holding on to that perpetuates this experience. And if we figure out what it is that we are holding on to, actually, it's not a matter of figuring it out, it's a matter of realizing it. And if you're able to consciously let go, then this will stop. Does that make sense?
Thank
Does
you,
that help?
Al. Yes, that does. I personally appreciated when you talked about the sticky layers of our mind and just being aware of those in order to peel back and peel those away. So thank you for leading us through this webinar today. Because we are a little bit close to our time, I'm going to go ahead and move us along here. If you could advance, yes, perfect, this slide. I just want to remind all participants we will have the recording posted today as well as the presentation, and there are numerous resources at Al's website, summitmindfulness.com. You can listen to pre-recorded guided meditations, and these are all free to you. We'd also really appreciate it if you would complete our survey directly following this webinar. And in 3 weeks, if you'd like to join us for our next mindfulness webinar, it will be on mind states. And we would love to have you again. And then finally, just a reminder, we have a great newsletter at peacehealth.org/healthyu that you can sign up for. And we send various articles, especially during this time of COVID. There's lots of resources there to help you manage and get through. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. And thank you very much, Al, for leading us through this mindfulness practice.
Thank you for moderating this, Summer.
You're welcome. Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you all. Have a nice day.